Hey you guys, I'm Stacy and this is Gorgeously Aging, and today I'm doing a microblading touch-up and some brow shading. If you are brand new to my channel, I have been in the beauty and aesthetics industry my entire adult life, and I was certified in permanent cosmetics back in 2006. Having said that, doing microblading or brow shading on yourself is a little bit awkward, but it is doable. I started today by sanitizing my brows and then putting on a topical lidocaine. I've wiped that off thoroughly, and we're going to go right into brow mapping. This does take some practice to do on yourself, and you'll see in this video that I do not do it perfectly, but this gives me a rough guideline and some very important markings that are landmarks for doing the microblading. I'm not going to explain every step in detail, but do watch some brow mapping videos. It's very important. The center mark above the nose, there right in the middle of the forehead, is important. And the two vertical markings to identify where the brow should start are also very important. I am going to measure this with a caliper to make sure it is an equal distance from the center line. Getting that center line point and these landmarks in the right place are important to the overall symmetry. The brow mapping doesn't signify the finished look or finished shape necessarily of the brow. It's just an area to work within so that your brows do have symmetry. Some important considerations other than that central point and where the brows start are where the tails end, and this can be customized, and the elevation of the tail of the brow can be adjusted higher or lower depending on your personal preference. The arch of the brow can be peaked or it can be rounded, and this comes into play once you actually start microblading or shading. Although the eyebrows are sisters and not twins, it is important to get them as even as possible, including the arch. Do keep in mind that if you have Botox and you have one brow that raises more than the other because of that toxin, this will affect the outcome. I think it's best to wait until your tox is nearly worn off to do microblading. Although you can do it really any time, just keep in mind that your muscle strength will throw off things a little bit. There are so many ways to do brow mapping, so definitely watch a lot of videos and find one that works well for you. Remember, it doesn't have to be complicated. You really just need the critical landmarks, the central point, where the brows start, where the tails end, and the arches, making sure that they're all symmetrical. Here I am wiping off the markings I don't need, only leaving those that I do need. Having an overwhelming amount of pigment on your skin just makes things more confusing. The mapping string that I had used wasn't super pigmented because I had it around for a while, so if you do get mapping string, make sure that it's fresh. I'm using a white pencil here just to sharpen up the lower line of the brow, just because I do want that to be neat and I want you guys to be able to see it a little better, so this white pencil came in handy for that. I'm also over 50, so I don't see as well as I used to, so having a visual aid for while I'm working is really helpful. I also use a 10 times magnifying mirror, which I highly suggest if you're going to try to pigment or microblade your own brows. I'm going to be using a combination of two colors here. I will list everything I use in the description box below. A finger ring can be used for the pigment. I like to just set it on a disinfected tray, and I'm going to go ahead and use, this is a U-shape needle, and I find when working on myself, coming from the top to the bottom gives me a bit more control. Now I have almost no natural brows, and so microblading really is something that's important for me to give my face shape and definition. When working on others, I am much more adept at creating brow strokes, but when working on myself, it is more difficult, so I will be honest with you guys. The key is not letting your strokes get too long where they go outside of your border, and also making sure at the front of the brow the strokes are more up and down, and you gradually angle them over as you get towards the arch of the brow. This is definitely worth practicing on a microblading skin. This is like a little practice sheet. I will link one of those down below, and practicing plenty of times on that is so helpful. So I like to make a lot of short scratches in between the longer hair strokes to make it look more natural. I'm also going to be using a Charm Princess electric tool with a 1R needle to do some pixelating or some shading in the brows. I like to do this from about the arch back to the tail so that that area is a little more shaded in. Often on aging brows, we lose the back half or the last 50% of our brow from the arch to the tail, making it look like we don't have much of a tail of the brow. This process definitely takes a little patience and a little bit of confidence, and also going back in and getting little tiny hair strokes in between those longer hair strokes. This is a creative process, and so part of this is just being creative. You may want to watch this video several times because as I'm talking, you might be missing some of what I'm doing. It would be helpful to go back and check it out later. So you'll notice from the arch of the brow toward the tail, I'm starting at the top and coming down at an angle. So we're switching directions from the arch down to the tail. I know this looks a little scary and you have to be thinking this is going to turn out like absolute garbage, but I have always done my own microblading and it always turns out great. So although it doesn't look as precise as you see a lot of Instagram videos or YouTube videos because they are doing it on clients and have a different vantage point, this does turn out very nice. It's important to take your time and to always take a moment every now and then to take a look at how everything's coming together and what needs more work. It's a process that you shouldn't rush through. Now always remember, even if you don't have pigment on your blade, if you scratch the skin and then wipe pigment onto it, it will pick up that pigment. So you want to be very careful where you're scratching into the skin, even if there's no pigment on the needles. Now we're going to move on to using my Crown Princess tool and doing a little pixelating or shading. So we're going to go back and forth with a very light touch. There's not much pressure to this. With long strokes, we want to pixelate or shade that skin. This is a bit awkward on yourself because you typically would want, when you're working on somebody else, for that to be a 90-degree angle or straight up and down from the skin, and that's difficult to do on yourself. Now keep in mind, everybody's different as far as their propensity for bleeding. I tend to bleed pretty easily when doing this. So some people don't bleed at all, but redness or erythema is very common. The electric tool is very nice to have on hand for brow shading and for lip blushing, but if you are brand new, the hand tool, the little U-shaped microblading tool, is much less likely to cause you to make mistakes. With the electric tool, which is really nice to have, it can, with a slip of the hand up the forehead, create pigmentation in areas you don't want. I personally couldn't get the look that I want with just the hand tool, so I do like having that electric tool with the 1R needle, but you definitely could get started with just the hand tool and then graduate into the electric tool. You're going to see here in just a second how once I wipe this off and then apply more pigment and then wipe it, it will reveal more of the hair strokes. I always recommend a full month between touch-ups or treatments just to let the skin heal fully. After a month, if there are some little tweaks you need or the microblading has healed down too light, you can adjust the color and go in and create those adjustments that you need to be more happy with the results. Microblading always looks very dark and very intense at first. It is essentially a scab on the surface of the skin until it's completely healed. It will go through a flaking period at day 2 or 3 and be fully healed on the surface after about 5 to 7 days. It will continue healing beneath the surface for up to about 4 weeks. That's why we like 4 weeks between treatments. It's not uncommon for people to freak out and think that they have absolutely ruined their eyebrows because they do look dark and intense at first, but they always heal much lighter, and in a lot of cases they heal too light. This is where a touch-up after a month comes in so handy to adjust color and intensity if needed. Just a quick interruption about aftercare. Coat the eyebrows after the treatment with Aquaphor and apply that every few hours for the first few days and then less often moving forward. Showering is okay, but don't rub the eyebrows. Don't rub, pick, or scratch. This can pull the pigment out before it's fully healed. Gentle skincare products only, no actives, no retinols or tretinoin. Avoid hot tubs and pools and soaking the face in the bathtub. You don't want to submerge the eyebrows. Avoid heavy sweating or sweat in the brow area for 1 week. If you work out, wear some type of headband above the brows to avoid getting sweat in them. No makeup on the brows for 1 week post-treatment. You can put some light makeup on the rest of your face, just avoid putting makeup on the brows. After gently cleansing the face, pat the face gently to dry. Don't rub over the brow area. That's very important. I know this looks scary right now, you guys, but come back in a week and I will show you the finished results. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you in my next video. If you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of future video uploads.